Good people, hello guys. Today you'll be doing a factorization where we'll be doing sum of cubes and the difference of cubes. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, just do so guys. Now the first question or the first example which we are going to do today, it's 3 cubed plus 27. Now how do we factorize this difference of this sum of cubes? Now first thing here, we're gonna have a small bracket and then we have one big bracket, so we're gonna have two brackets like these ones. So the first step that you need to do here, we must find the cube root of x cubed and the cube root of 27. What is a cube root of x cubed? It's x. You put it here on the first bracket. What is the cube root of 27? It's 3. You put it here on this bracket, and then from there we have this sign here from our original sum. We just put it here, which is positive. Then from here, this big bracket, the first term that is going to be here, you're gonna say which term you're going to put, or you're going to times, that's gonna give you x cubed. Since we have x here, we need to times by this term that is going to be here. We're gonna times it by x squared in order for us to get what? X cubed. And then now we take this last term from here. We are asking ourselves, what term are we going to put here? That's gonna give us plus 27. What term that we're gonna times by 3? That's gonna give us 27. It's gonna be positive 9. And then from here, to get the middle term, now getting the middle term, we're gonna take this term here, which is x, and then we're gonna times it by this 3, which is gonna give us what? 3x. And then from here, since we have this positive sign, and then this term, we're gonna change the sign of this term here, which is going to be negative. And then from here, we are done by factorizing the sum of the cubes. Let's come to this one. I said the first step that you need to do, we must find first the cube root of 1 over 27. And we find the cube root of this term, we have x cubed here. And then we find the cube root of what? Of 216. Now, what is the cube root? In order for us to find the first small bracket, what is the cube root of 1 over 27? It's 1 all over 3. Now remember, we have x cubed. What is the cube root of x cubed? It's x. I hope you still see that one. And then now we need to find the cube root of 216. What is the cube root of 216? The cube root of 216 is what? It's 6. Remember, the sign here, or our original equation, is positive, so that sign is gonna come here, it's gonna be positive. Now we have this one big bracket. You ask yourself a question: to get 1 over 27 x cubed, which term that we're gonna times by this 1 over 3 x, that's gonna give us 1 over 27 x cubed? That term is just going to be 1 over 9x squared, which is 1 over 3 times 1 over 3x times 1 over 9x squared has to give us x cubed. And then now coming from this one term, what is a term that we're gonna times by 6? That's gonna give us what? 216. Which term is that? It's gonna be 36, because if we are saying 6 times 36 has to give us what? 216. And then from the middle term, now we need to times this term here, which is 1 over 3 times 6, which is give us what? Give us 2. Now this x also, because it's 1 over 3 x times this 6, which is going to give us what? 2x. Remember, this is positive. Now what sign that we are going to put here in front of this 2x? Since this sign it's positive, meaning the sign that is here, it's going to be negative. It's going to be the opposite of the sign that is there. Now let's go to the sum or the difference of cubes. The difference meaning the negative, the sum meaning the positive that we just did. Now here we're going to do almost the same thing, but now we're going to do the opposite in terms of the sign. First, let's find the cube root of 8x cubed. What is the cube root of x? Or the cube root of 8x cubed is just going to be 2x, which is going to be my first bracket. What is the cube root of 125? It's going to be what? It's going to be 5. Now remember, we have a sign that is negative here, meaning also here we're putting the same sign as this one. Now coming to the last bracket, now we're asking ourselves which term that is going to times by this 2x that's going to give us what? 8x cubed. That term has to be 4s squared, because if we are saying 2x times 4x squared is giving us 8x cubed. Now coming with this 5, now which term that is going to times by this negative 5 that's going to give us what? Negative 125. Remember, now it has to be positive, but now since this is negative times positive has to give us this negative, but which term that is going to times by this is going to give us 125? It has to be 25. Now coming to the middle term, the middle term, we say we times this by this, so we're going to times this 2x times this 5x, which is given us 10x. But now since this sign is negative, so the sign that we are going to put here is going to be positive, the opposite sign of these terms that are here. Coming to this one now, doing more or less the same thing, we must find the cube root of 64x cubed, and also the cube root of y cubed. The first bracket and the second big bracket. Now here the cube root of 64, cube root of 64, it's 4, meaning we're going to have 4, but now the cube root of also x cubed, which is going to be x. Now the cube root of y, it's what? It's just y. Now remember, the sign here it's negative, so we're putting the same sign here as negative. Now you need to ask yourself the question, which term that we're going to times by 4x, that's going to give us what? 64x cubed. Which term that we're going to times by 4x, that's going to give us 64x cubed. That term needs to be 16x squared, because if I say 4 times 16 has to give me 64, and then this x times this x squared needs to give me x cubed. And then from there, coming to this one here, which term that I have to times by this y, that's gonna give me y cubed. And also remember, this y cubed here, it's negative, so it just needs to times this negative y times whatever y here, but it needs to give me a negative, so this y must be positive, that's going to come here, which is going to be y squared, because this negative y times by this positive y squared is giving me the negative y cubed. Now the middle term, now Remember, the middle term we are timesing these two. Timesing these two is just 4xy. But now remember, the sign here it's negative, so the sign here is gonna be positive. I hope you see that one. Now I just have a bonus question here. Bonus question here. Remember, we're still doing what? The difference of cubes. Now finding here the cube root of a cubed b cubed. The cube root of this is just a b. And then the cube root of 1 is just 1. Now remember, the sign here it's what? It's negative. So the sign that we're going to put here is the same sign as the original equation. Now you ask yourself which term that you're going to times by this ab that's going to give you ab cubed, which is just a squared b squared. Now going to this one, which term they're going to times by 1 that's going to give you 1, but that one needs to be negative. So this one that's going to be here needs to be positive, because negative times positive give us negative. And then the middle term. Now the middle term is very important. How do we find the middle term? You times this by this, which is just a b. Now remember, the sign here it's negative, so the sign that you need to put here must be the opposite of this sign, which is positive. And then after that you are done. Thank you so much. Umakebalo.